From your local election headquarters, here is This Week in Louisiana Politics.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. I'm Fred Childers. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Former Speaker of the House Clay Sexsnyder pleaded not guilty Thursday in the 19th Judicial District Court in Baton Rouge. You might recall the Republican leader was arrested back in November and charged with 2 felonies related to a rare artifact in the state capitol. Michelle Masson has the latest from this week's court proceedings.
Clay Sexsnyder turned himself in last November, but has now pleaded not guilty in court. Sexsnyder has been indicted on charges of theft over $25,000 and malfeasance in office. Prosecutors allege he took a rare state artifact, an ancient cypress piece apparently dating back to the 8th century, now missing from the state capitol. Sexsnyder left office in 2024 after serving more than a decade in the Louisiana House. The Louisiana AG's office says the indictment followed an investigation by the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation. A motion hearing is scheduled for February 4th, which Assistant Attorney General John Russell says he'll be present for.
Yes, I will. We have motions on that date, and we'll be tendering over discovery and things of that nature.
Sexsnyder previously represented House District 81, parts of Livingston, Ascension, St. John the Baptist, and St. James parishes from 2012 to 2020, later becoming Speaker. The AG's office says the case remains an ongoing criminal matter. Liz Murrell has publicly commented, saying Sexsnyder is responsible for returning the artifact due to the timing of its disappearance. She released the statement, "You don't get to keep state property, it doesn't belong to you," but now she's leaving it at that.
No comment, she says.
Sexsnyder faces charges of theft and malfeasance in office. For your local election headquarters, I'm Michelle Masson.
All right, and we'll keep up with the trial and bring you all the latest developments. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro appeared in court for a 4-count indictment. He's accused of leading a 25-year narco-terrorism conspiracy. This comes after a U.S. raid that led to the capture of Maduro and his wife. And Louisiana lawmakers are responding to the capture on social media. Take a look. House Speaker Mike Johnson saying the arrest was justified, calling Maduro, quote, responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans after years of trafficking illegal drugs and violent cartel members into our country. Governor Jeff Landry is also in support of the president's decision, saying in part, having served as a sheriff's deputy and AG, I have seen the devastating effects of illegal drugs on American families. With over 100,000 opioid-related deaths annually, I am grateful to see a president finally taking real action in the war on drugs. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrell also singing the president's praises, saying, quote, his capture sends a clear message. If you traffic poison into our country and kill Americans, you will face justice. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, Democratic Congressman Cleo Fields expressing his disapproval over the president's decision, saying, quote, I have serious concerns about President Trump's decision to take military action against Venezuela without informing congressional leaders, and there is absolutely no excuse for not doing so. On Thursday, the U.S. Senate advanced a war powers resolution to limit further attacks on Venezuela. The move was seen as more of a gesture from lawmakers who were against President Trump's decision to carry out the operation without going to Congress first. As most knew, the bill had very little chance of becoming law because even if it had passed the House, President Trump would have had to sign it, and that's clearly not likely. Back here in Louisiana, some local law enforcement agencies in Louisiana are cooperating with immigration and customs enforcement on the heels of those ICE raids. In Lafayette, sheriff's deputies can now perform immigration officer functions under ICE's direction. KLFY's Kai Price has that story.
Deputies here at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office tell me they now have a new role working with ICE on immigration enforcement, though they say their normal duties will not change.
What that does is allow deputies that wasn't necessarily able to, because we're local law enforcement and we can only enforce certain levels of law, that would allow those specifically trained deputies to enforce some of the federal aspect of things with an ICE supervisor's oversight.
Sergeant Chris Cormier tells News 10 the sheriff's office has signed 2 agreements in December with ICE under the federal 287G program. According to the documents, this will allow a small number of deputies to receive special federal training to handle certain immigration tasks in the field. He says this training doesn't change their normal duties, but will give them extra authority under ICE supervision.
When they come into contact with certain individuals and under certain circumstances in their day-to-day operations, this will allow these specially trained deputies to do is dig deeper into the information they seek. If this ends up being someone that ICE needs or would want, then the deputy would then contact the ICE supervisor and they would come take things from there.
Cormier says the paperwork indicates this program will not affect daily responsibilities or jail operations. It's designed to be an added tool that deputies can use in the field under ICE supervision to gather additional information on individuals who may fall under federal immigration enforcement.
We're not taking tips on doing any raids or anything like that. It's another tool for the tool bag, so to speak, that our enforcement and correction deputies can use in their day-to-day operations.
In Lafayette Parish, Kai Price, KLFY News 10.
And moving on, the CDC announced new recommendations this week for childhood vaccines, lowering the number of shots kids should receive. While the president says this puts the U.S. in alignment with other countries, medical groups and some lawmakers are expressing some doubts. Washington correspondent Maddie Biertemple reports on the change.
The CDC now recommends 11 vaccines for children, down from 17. Shots no longer broadly recommended, but for high-risk groups or when doctors and parents decide it's necessary, include flu, rotavirus, hepatitis A and B, and RSV. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says this decision, quote, rebuilds trust in public health, something Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn says eroded during the pandemic.
I think it's appropriate to look at them and see what should be required and what is not necessary, but is just the big, heavy hand of government.
Parents still can get those shots for their children, and they will still be covered by insurance, according to President Trump. HHS said it made this move after reviewing other nations' recommendations and finding the U.S. to be a, quote, outlier when it comes to the number of shots and doses. The American Academy of Pediatrics opposes the change.
Our vaccination program here in the U.S. has been incredibly successful, preventing millions of illnesses.
Democrats in Congress are slamming the move.
This is the absolute worst message to send to Americans.
Millions of people will die.
And some Republicans, like Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, a doctor, posted that changing the schedule, quote, will cause unnecessary fear for patients and doctors and will make America sicker. Vaccines still on the recommended for all list include measles, whooping cough, polio, tetanus, chickenpox, and HPV, though HPV now has fewer doses recommended. In Washington, I'm Maddie Biertemple.
And she mentioned Senator Cassidy. He told reporters that 2 unvaccinated Louisiana children have died and that could have been prevented, and said he did not want to see any child dying from something so preventable. Senator Cassidy also says that children are dying in Louisiana because of measles and pertussis. While responding to questions about those new recommendations by the CDC, the announcement comes as federal health department continue to adhere to HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s anti-vaccine beliefs. The CDC previously recommended 18 shots for kids. Now it's 11. Cassidy is, again, a former doctor, and he says this is the wrong move and kids will get sick and die.
We've had 2 children die from pertussis who are not vaccinated. 2 young children die. And as a doc who cares so deeply about patients, so deeply about my state and my country, I don't want any child dying from something which is so preventable.
To confirm Kennedy, you see there, as HHS Secretary, after saying he was confident the anti-vaccine figurehead wouldn't sow distrust in vaccines. Millions of Americans are starting to see their health care premiums go up after Affordable Care Act subsidies expired at the start of the new year. Congress is gearing up for a continued policy fight as lawmakers return to work this past week. Washington correspondent Gabrielle Caracciolo reports.
As lawmakers return to Congress this week, Republicans and Democrats agree health care is too expensive.
One issue is on my mind is lowering health care costs.
The topic is not going to go away anytime soon.
For months, they've debated how to fix the problem. Affordable Care Act tax credits expired at the start of the new year, and millions of Americans are now facing higher premiums.
I am deeply concerned. No one can afford a 400% increase in their health care.
It'll be interesting. My Republican friends had plenty of chances to kind of extend the existing program. They chose not to.
The expired credits first began in 2021 as a temporary COVID relief measure. The issue then became a sticking point for Democrats during the government shutdown.
The subsidies in the last several years have increased the cost of health care. We have to look at it holistically to come up with a solution.
The majority of Republicans argue the credits are a waste of taxpayer dollars. They'd like to figure out another way to lower costs. But Democrats want to see the credits extended for another 3 years.
It's not just the folks who lose the tax credits under the ACA, but if you suddenly put 10, 15, 20 million more people into the uninsured basket, they will show up at the emergency room, raising everybody's rates.
Just before the holiday break, some House Republicans broke ranks, forcing a vote that's expected to take place this week. If the extension passes the House, the credits still face an uphill battle in the Senate. In Washington, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo.
The now expired subsidies were first given out to ACA recipients in 2021 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming up, Louisiana's Secretary of State wants you to know about some changes in the upcoming elections. We'll tell you all about it. And a new law limits who can sue after a car crash. It's the at-fault law, and it promises to bring down insurance costs.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. With the first election day of the year just a month away, many voters are wondering whether there are any changes they need to know about before heading to the polls. Brianna Moore spoke with Secretary of State Nancy Landry this week to find out what voters should know.
Our voting system, if they did rank them, would probably be ranked last because it's 30 years old and very outdated.
A Systems Secretary of State Nancy Landry says she has strived to improve since her first day in office. Now a new year underway and elections right around the corner as the state is working with what she calls an outdated voting system.
We also did an initiative to boost voter confidence because we wanted people to know how good our elections were.
Landry says she's been traveling statewide, emphasizing the 4 Ps of election security: people, policies, procedures, and physical security.
And those 4 things work together to keep our elections safe.
She stressed that Louisiana elections are secure, pointed to stricter voter laws, offline machines handled by trained staff, and voter roll checks focus on accuracy, not limiting participation.
For 2026 will be continuing our comprehensive voter outreach campaign on closed party primaries.
She says certain races will move to closed primaries in 2026, limiting Republicans and Democrats to their own primaries, allowing no-party voters to choose with other parties in the general election and winners decided by plurality.
We found that it was confusing voters with the change to the closed party primary system because people who were a member of the independent party thought that they were unaffiliated. They did not realize that they were actually a member of a party.
She outlined party change deadlines, explained no party voters are locked into their primary choice. She stated that the independent party was eliminated and declined to comment on redistricting's impact on 2026 elections. Reporting Brianna Moore, Louisiana First News.
Secretary Landry urged voters to check their registration and party affiliation before Election Day and called for new poll workers as many longtime volunteers are retiring. Louisiana is known to have one of the highest car insurance rates in the nation, but lawmakers hope that can be fixed. A new law went into effect this year, which is supposed to help determine who can file claims for car crash damages. However, some argue this would make what's already a complicated system even more complicated. Others say this is just what the doctor ordered.
This does not take anyone's rights away from meeting with attorneys or having representation. We're just looking at something that has shifted in so many other states and saying it looks like it's bringing good policy in these states. And so we felt like it was a good time too for Louisiana to go ahead and make that change as well.
Lawmakers say they'll work to compare the data from the new law to last year to see if this improves the claims process. Governor Landry has been invited to an interesting kind of race in Greenland. We'll tell you why, of course.
This is your local election headquarters.
Well, Governor Jeff Landry's office has confirmed that he will go to Greenland in March. This after President Trump asked Landry to be his envoy to Greenland, a Danish territory that Trump says the U.S. should control for military purposes. Now we're told Governor Landry has been invited to attend the country's national dog sledding race. Last year, Vice President Vance's wife was supposed to attend, but canceled amid protests. New Orleans police held a news conference to discuss the final crime statistics for 2025. Reporter Mallory Smith from our sister station in New Orleans has more about why the police superintendent says things are looking up for the city.
At a Monday news conference, New Orleans Police Department leaders looked back at 2022, a year Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick called one of the darkest in the city's history. That year, New Orleans recorded 266 murders, the highest total in decades. Fast forward to 2025, the city recorded 121 murders, a 3% drop from 2024 and a 55% drop from 2022.
We believe that our strategies are working, and that this is the fruit of the strategies.
Kirkpatrick says the NOPD's approach is precision-based, focusing on the small number of people driving the most violence.
We know who does the harm in our city, and we focus on them.
Gun violence also saw sharp declines. Between 2024 and 2025, fatal shootings dropped 21% and non-fatal shootings dropped 3%. Armed robberies also fell 28% from 2024 and 70% since 2022. Carjackings went down 35% from last year and 64% from their peak. City Councilman Eugene Green called the trend significant.
One of the reasons is because we've had the success of our residents, our team members, who have called in what they see and who are committed to helping to keep our city safe.
The department confirmed shoplifting is up and staffing remains a challenge, with 910 employees currently, adding on 34 over the past year. During the briefing, Kirkpatrick was asked about comments made by President Trump, claiming New Orleans crime is, quote, down to almost nothing.
We're just grateful that crime is down, and I don't care who gets the credit.
The NOPD also addressing questions about the data, confirming a new record system is now tracking all crimes more comprehensively. Officials say some numbers may look different going forward, not because crime increased, but because reporting is now more complete.
You can have a great sense of confidence that you can come to the French Quarter and the other entertainment districts of New Orleans. And for those of y'all who have ever left because of Katrina, it's time to come home too.
And the New Orleans police superintendent also said she supports having National Guard troops on the city's streets if it's constitutional and ethical. Up next, we'll have a look at the week ahead on your local election headquarters. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. We are looking ahead to the coming week. On Wednesday, some lawmakers will meet up for the House Committee on Criminal Justice at the Capitol. That'll happen at 10 a.m. They'll discuss recidivism, parole, workforce training, and a number of other topics. And on Thursday, the Senate Finance Committee will meet at the Capitol as well. That'll happen at 1 p.m. They'll talk about court costs in cases involving the state. Thank you so much for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay informed, and I'll see you next week right here on your local election headquarters.